calm should feel good. Rest should feel earned. Stillness should feel safe. Ease should feel like relief. But for a burned-out brain, calm feels wrong. It feels suspicious. It feels uncomfortable. It feels like you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing. Many people describe it the same way. I feel lazy when things are calm. I feel guilty when I'm not stressed. I feel like I should be doing more. This isn't a character flaw. It's a nervous system problem. Let's start with the core truth. A burned-out brain is not calibrated for calm. It's calibrated for survival. When someone has lived under prolonged stress, financial pressure, work pressure, emotional pressure, the nervous system adapts. Not temporarily, structurally. Stress becomes the baseline. Urgency becomes normal. Overthinking becomes familiar. Constant motion becomes safety. And calm becomes unfamiliar. Now let's talk about conditioning. For a long time, stress was associated with productivity. When you were stressed, you were useful. When you were busy, you were responsible. When you were exhausted, you were trying. This association gets reinforced externally. People praise hustle. They admire sacrifice. They reward overextension. So the brain learns a dangerous rule. Stress equals value. Once that rule is installed, calm triggers guilt, because calm feels like a violation of identity. Now let's talk about what burnout actually is. Burnout is not just exhaustion. It's a nervous system stuck in high alert with no release. The body keeps producing stress chemicals even when threats are gone. So when calm appears, the system doesn't relax. It panics, because the absence of stress feels like a blind spot. The brain asks, what am I missing? What should I be worried about? Why am I not doing something? That internal alarm gets mislabeled as laziness. But it's not laziness. It's hypervigilance with nowhere to go. Now let's talk about rest guilt. Rest guilt doesn't come from morals. It comes from conditioning. If rest was always followed by consequences in the past, falling behind, losing opportunities, financial stress, the brain associates rest with danger. So when you rest now, the body reacts as if something bad is about to happen. That reaction feels like anxiety, and anxiety demands action. So people interrupt calm. They check emails, they create tasks, they manufacture urgency, not because they want stress, but because stress feels safer than the unknown. Now let's talk about the productivity lie. Burned-out brains equate motion with progress. Stillness feels like stagnation. Calm feels like decay. Ease feels like loss of momentum. So people push even when pushing no longer produces results. This leads to a cycle. Overwork, endure, burnout, guilt during rest, more overwork. Now let's talk about financial context. Money stress accelerates this pattern. When finances were unstable, constant vigilance was necessary. Checking balances, running numbers, planning contingencies. That vigilance saved you. So the brain learned, if I relax, something bad happens. When finances stabilize, the habit remains. The threat is gone. The response stays. Now let's talk about identity collapse. Many people don't know who they are without stress. Their self-image is built around effort, around pushing, around surviving. Calm threatens that identity. If I'm not struggling, who am I? If I'm not exhausted, am I still valuable? If life feels easy, am I cheating? These questions are unsettling, so people reject calm before it can settle. Now let's talk about the body again. Burnout lives in the body. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, restlessness, difficulty enjoying stillness. You can't think your way out of this. You have to retrain the nervous system. Now let's talk about why calm feels like laziness specifically. Laziness implies moral failure, and moral failure creates urgency to correct. The brain prefers that interpretation because urgency feels familiar. Calm requires trust. Trust that things won't fall apart. Trust that rest won't be punished. Trust that stability can last. Burned out systems don't trust easily. Now let's talk about why forcing rest doesn't work. Telling yourself just relax doesn't help. Because the threat response is not cognitive. It's physiological. The body needs repeated experiences of calm without consequence. That's how safety is relearned. Now let's talk about recalibration. Recalibration is slow. At first, calm feels boring, then uncomfortable, then suspicious, then neutral, then safe. Each stage takes time. People quit too early. They mistake discomfort for danger. Now let's talk about rebuilding motivation. Burnout strips motivation because motivation was fueled by fear. When fear leaves, the engine stalls. This feels like laziness. It isn't. It's a transition. New motivation comes from curiosity, meaning, and choice, but those take time to surface. Now let's talk about productivity after burnout. True productivity after burnout looks quieter, less frantic, less reactive, more intentional. But because it lacks drama, people undervalue it. They chase the old feeling. Now let's talk about comparison. People compare their calm to others' hustle. They see movement and assume progress, but often they're comparing regulation to dysregulation. Calm people look slow. Stressed people look busy. Busy is not better. Now let's talk about the hardest part. Letting calm exist without explaining it, without justifying it, without turning it into self-improvement, without optimizing it, just letting it be. This is incredibly difficult for burned-out brains. Now let's talk about the turning point. For many people, it happens quietly. They stop reacting to the guilt. They stop correcting the calm. They stop turning rest into a problem. They let the discomfort pass. And one day, calm stops feeling like laziness. It starts feeling like strength. Now let's talk about the final truth. Calm feels like laziness to a burned-out brain because stress was once required to survive. Your body learned that lesson well. Now it needs to learn a new one. That safety doesn't require suffering. That value doesn't require exhaustion. That progress doesn't require panic. And learning that feels uncomfortable before it feels freeing. So if calm feels wrong, that doesn't mean you're regressing. It means you're healing. And healing often feels like doing less until it allows you to do what actually matters. Quietly, sustainably, without burning yourself down again. There's another reason calm feels like laziness that most people miss. Calm removes distraction from the self. When you're burned out, constant activity protects you from self-awareness. There's always something to fix, something to chase, something to worry about. That constant motion keeps deeper emotions suppressed. When calm arrives, the distractions disappear, and suddenly you're left alone with yourself. Unprocessed disappointment, unanswered questions, old grief, unresolved fear. This can feel overwhelming, not because calm is bad, but because calm creates space. And space reveals what stress was covering. Now let's talk about emotional backlog again, but more personally. Burnout often accumulates quietly. You push through exhaustion. You delay rest. You postpone reflection. The body keeps score. When calm appears, that backlog surfaces. Fatigue that was ignored, sadness that was postponed, anger that was swallowed. People misinterpret this as something's wrong. It isn't. It's release. Now let's talk about control. Stress creates a sense of control through effort. I'm managing things. I'm on top of it. I'm handling it. Calm removes that illusion. There's nothing to manage, nothing to fix, nothing to brace for. And without that effort-based control, people feel exposed. They don't trust stillness yet, so they try to reassert control through productivity. Now let's talk about the fear underneath the guilt. For burned-out brains, calm feels unsafe because it feels reversible. They worry, what if I relax and everything collapses? What if this peace doesn't last? What if I fall behind again? so they stay alert. Alertness feels responsible. Now let's talk about rest as a threat. If rest was always followed by consequences in the past, missed rent, missed deadlines, financial stress, the nervous system associates rest with danger. Even when circumstances change, the association remains. The body reacts before logic can intervene. Now let's talk about why self-talk doesn't work. You can tell yourself, I deserve rest. I've done enough. It's okay to slow down. But the nervous system doesn't respond to permission. It responds to experience. Repeated calm without punishment is what rewires safety. Now let's talk about micro-calm. For burned-out brains, large blocks of rest feel overwhelming. Small, predictable calm works better. 10 minutes without interruption, a walk without urgency, an evening without optimization. These small experiences teach the body nothing bad happened. Over time, tolerance increases. Now let's talk about boredom again. Burned-out brains hate boredom. Boredom feels like emptiness, like loss of momentum, like decay. But boredom is the doorway to regulation. It's the nervous system downshifting. Most people interrupt boredom too quickly. They reach for stimulation. They create tasks. They scroll. That interruption prevents healing. Now let's talk about redefining usefulness. Burnout ties usefulness to output. Rest feels useless, but healing is productive, just not visibly. Repair happens quietly. Regulation happens invisibly. Recovery happens internally. Just because you can't see progress doesn't mean it isn't happening. Now let's talk about the comparison trap. People compare their calm to others' visible effort. They see stress and assume progress. They see busyness and assume success. They forget that many people are operating in survival mode, not effectiveness. Calm people look slow, but slow often lasts. Now let's talk about the turning moment again. For many people, the shift happens when they stop trying to use calm. They stop turning rest into a productivity tool. They stop optimizing recovery. They stop measuring it. They just let it exist. That surrender is uncomfortable, but necessary. Now, let's talk about safety finally settling. After enough repetition, something changes. Calm no longer triggers alarm. Stillness no longer demands correction. Rest no longer feels like danger. It feels normal, and normal is powerful. Now let's close with the deepest truth of this video. Calm feels like laziness to a burned-out brain because stress once kept you alive. That doesn't make calm wrong. It means your system learned survival very well. Now it's learning something harder, that life doesn't always require bracing, that effort isn't always protection, that worth doesn't require suffering, and that lesson takes time. So if calm still feels uncomfortable, don't rush to fix it. Don't shame it. Don't explain it away. Let it teach your nervous system a new baseline, because once calm becomes familiar, you don't lose drive, you lose panic. And what replaces it is something far more powerful: sustainable energy, clear thinking, intentional action. Not because you're pushing, but because you're no longer burning yourself just to feel safe.